All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for waking up early and come here to hear my talk. I just want to quickly understand the audience a little bit. How many are developers, just by raise of hand? Okay, great, great, great. How many are in China? Like your game is launched in China, not by checking China in iOS, but actually publishing, doing live off, and managing the game in China. And or at least who is on the Android stores, any one of the Android stores in China. Okay, one, great, great, cool. So this talk is not about how big China is and why you should be in China. I mean, by coming to this talk, I assume you already kind of know that, and it goes without saying. What I want to do is trying to unpack China and demystify it a little bit, touching on just a few points. Just some of the common questions I hear when I talk to people, just trying to understand how the rev share actually work, what are the legal requirements, and also, when we talk about channels, there's stores, there's platforms, there's a publisher versus third party and whatnot. So I want to go through this rather quickly. I want it to be more interactive, leave more time for Q&A perhaps. And so I'll go through it quickly as possible, hold your question toward the end, and we'll do Q&A. So a couple things I want to talk about is, first of all, the value chain. In the West, it's fairly straightforward. You have developers, maybe a publisher, and channel, and that's about it. So in China, when you talk about channels, you really mean not just the stores. You mean a lot of things. The App Store, the mobile ads, pre-installed channels, portal community, basically anything that stands in between or be part of what the player sees, and that gets them to the ultimate place where they go download your game. And obviously, this is very different from the West. Here, I'm talking about it, basically for Android. You have Google Play Store, and that's about it. In China, there's easily a couple hundred alternatives. Some figure would say thousands, some say dozens. And really, channel-wise, the thing that promotes your app can easily get into thousands. But in terms of stores, maybe a couple dozen are rather important. A few really big ones are Tencent, 360, and Baidu. You hear this a lot, and everybody will say, we're the biggest channel, we're the biggest publisher, we're the biggest distribution, this and that, for China. And they may be looking at the numbers slightly differently, or their definition for the biggest, or their definition for what counts as a download, what counts as an install is different. And we have third-party analysis trying to show some insight into Android market in China, and the numbers vary a bit. But since we're in Amsterdam, it's only right to look at Newzoo's reports. So for China, this is about coverage. So my app from Tencent is installed on about 23% of Android devices, 360 mobile assistant, 20%, Baidu, 17%. If you look at other reports, it could be 32 for my app, some other number for Baidu and 360, and iResearch has 25. The numbers vary a little bit. It's not critical to get it precise right, and I don't think you could. But the relevant point is the Tencent's My App is the biggest, and followed closely by 360 and Baidu. Now you may think, 23% coverage, is that enough to, is that enough? Of course not. So most publishers will talk to you about, getting onto multiple channels or multiple stores. And that could be a viable approach to crack Android in China. But I want to show you also, as talk goes by, there are some fallacies and some shortfalls when you employ that approach. I do want to say, I want to stay as objective as possible, just trying to explain the facts. I'll use a lot of third-party numbers and refer to other websites. And this, presentation can be shared afterward, and you can look up those links, some very useful intelligence. So for my app, just give you an idea of the scope, even though it only covers 23% of, if you believe Newzoo, Android device, its peak daily distribution is 145 million downloads a day. In comparison, if you look at Sensor Tower's data, Apple App Store did, 5.5 billion in Q4 of last year. So that's 90 days, or about 60 million downloads a day on average. And my app alone in China is about 240% of that distribution power. And it is the biggest, but there is a long tail, just to give you an idea of the size of China again. So what does the store do, actually? Distribution is obvious. In the West, there's also discoverability, offers account, offer payment, ad networks, etc. In China, maybe less so. When you only reach a single digit or low double digit of the market, it doesn't really give you the discoverability or account or payment that you deserve. So hence, we have this thing called platforms, which lives kind of on top of stores. It's what players reach before they go to store to download. From Tencent, the two tier of platform is Premier tier and also My App platform. So the games are actually hosted and distributed from My App, but it's being promoted. It's being pushed to user through either WeChat, Mobile QQ, or a number of other apps that's in Tencent family. Just some big numbers, apologize for those. From Q3, we haven't released the Q4 numbers yet, but they're in the high millions, hundreds of millions MAU. And those little other apps that also drive traffic to my app, the three of them are over 50 million DAU, three over 30 million DAU, and dozens more over 10 million DAU. So all this are together, they make the Tencent platform, and they all drive traffic into our Tencent app store for a user to download. The platform also, does. It's called platform because it's not just for distribution. It is, in case of WeChat and Mobile QQ, there are personal communication tools first and foremost. Especially with QQ, it's been with the company since it started. It's the first product. It's what the company set up to make. Over the past 12 years or so, or 15 years or 17 years, in the West, you went from MSN to Facebook to Twitter to Snapchat to everything, and each one is focused or specialized in a different area. In China, it's been QQ all along, and we expand on top of that. We have our version of Facebook by using QQ account. We have our e-commerce and search using QQ account. We have homepage and chats and photo sharing and our version of YouTube, all building on top of this account. So we know people's history, right? We know where they grew up. We know their family number. We know their friends. We know their kind of economic status. We know which games they've been playing in the past 15 years. So all this is enormous data that the publishing arm can utilize when we operate a game. It's one tiny difference between Tencent and other publishers. And speaking of the importance of social graph, you can see here, this is what we observe in the games that we publish. As the number of in-game friends you have increases, both the daily session and also the secondary retention increase dramatically. One thing about Tencent, when I talk to developers, is the high retention number. When we publish a game, it goes onto my app, but it's not being promoted by WeChat and Mobile QQ automatically. If you know Tencent because of WeChat and you come to our BD people say, my game is great, I want Tencent to be the publisher, and we want it to get on WeChat. And that's our condition. Sorry, forget about it. There is no guarantee which platform. We will guarantee your game will be on our store, but there is no guarantee which platform we will be pushing it. And which one we use is completely based on merit. If your game does well, if the retention number is high, we will use our best resource to push your game. If it's not, or if it drops, then you get less resource, or less backing. And the retention numbers we ask for are extremely high. Secondary retention easily over the 60s, third day retention, 50s, and 70 retention in the 40s. And it's not that crazy as it sounds, because when you do have, the social graph and in-game friends, and we know the player's characteristic as well and as finely as we do, it's not that difficult, to be honest, to have very, very high retention numbers, because we can target our player base very precisely. And then there's publishers. Most publishers, as you can see later in the slide, they help you do, typical Chinese publisher comes and say, we are a Chinese publisher, we take your source code, we will localize it, we will integrate it into every store, and we'll do the mass distribution for you. Tencent goes to the opposite, takes opposite perspective. We only publish on our own channels, we only publish on our own stores and platform, and we would like, you to do the integration. There's pros and cons on both sides. For being a single platform publisher, there's less work in integration. Therefore, you can, the developers can hopefully pick that up. And also, you don't have to share the source code. There's less concern about piracy and leakage. But when we publish a game, there's obviously marketing and promotion, there's social graph, and then there's also online, offline branding. Again, we know our users. We know that we have the traffic, and we're pretty good at this stuff. So another thing publisher provides in China is government compliance. My app, our store, is an open platform. Really, you can self-publish on there, and you get higher revenue share in exchange for no guarantee or less marketing or support, promotion support. But as a Western developer or overseas developer, you can self-publish, but no, you really can't. And this is because the Chinese regulations, and there are a number of them. They're linked to each of these titles or bulletin point. Apologies in Chinese, but there are many departments, many regulators regulating online cultural stuff or games. The first one is about anything that's published considered as content on the internet. The second one is about web games, and by web game, it's not browser game, it's online game. And online game, it doesn't mean it's multiplayer with a server or client. It means anything that's distributed. So if you download something from the internet, even though it's a single player, single device, single player standalone game, it's still considered online game because, by their definition, because it's being distributed on the internet. And then, these are some guides, third and fourth, about how do you get the license to be a publisher, or you can self-publish. You have the right to distribute. And the short version is that you cannot. You're not allowed to. You cannot get the license if you're a foreign developer. So that's really the bottom line. The way to get your game into China, unfortunately, is to license it to a Chinese publisher, and you have to license on an exclusive basis. That doesn't mean you have to work with only one channel or one store. The publisher could distribute your game on multiple stores. But in our case, we only do so on our platform. And just want to go back a little bit really quickly because of all this distribution or this driving of traffic that our platform has. Even though, we look at Tencent only, my app only covers 23% of the device, but in terms of, game distribution or coverage, sorry, it's in Chinese again, Tencent games is 77.9%. This is still coverage. This means for every 100 gamers, close to 80% has downloaded a game from Tencent's ecosystem in Q3 of 2005, compares to Baidu and 360 at a much lower rate. So, it's not about how many devices are installing your store. It's about where players go to download your game. Obviously, this adds up far above 100 is coverage. People on our platforms download more games than once in a quarter. We launched about 20-some games on WeChat last year. Every time we launch, there's a thing about downloading the latest Tencent games. It's like players who want to play all the editor's pick on App Store. Then jumping back to the last bulletin point, I just want to quickly emphasize this is about getting the approval for your games to be published. And you had to do this before your games goes live on the store. Again, there's a lot of requirements. You have to submit all these materials to the government or to the regulators. And your publisher, your Chinese publisher, will be doing this for you, but a lot of it would need your support. For example, the game description, you had to write a full, kind of like a game design document to explain what the game does, how the control works. And in case of mobile games, the publisher would be delivering physical devices to the regulators so they can test play the game with accounts pre-installed and pre-registered and topped up. So it's a high-level account. They can test play the game back and forth throughout, and they will. And you have to deliver all your text, dialogues, descriptive language, and if your game has a song, and that song has lyrics, you have to have all that in text and translate into Chinese for the government to review and approve. You have to give this thing, basically saying copyright. You have to copyright your game and your code with the appropriate authority, maybe in your country. Many countries don't require that. I never see, some developers never do that, and that's fine, but then we need something else in lieu of that. So your publisher, will be coming to you asking a lot of this stuff, and it's in your best interest to work with them, even though it's really tedious and really, you don't necessarily see the point of it, but it's required by law, unfortunately. Then, so we talk about the stores in the West, providing all this, for you, discoverability accounts. These are covered by, the platforms in China instead of the stores. But what about payments? How does your rev share actually work? Chinese publisher would, tell you, we do 50-50 rev share, or 40-60, or 70-30, whatever. And what does that actually net you of the total gross? So I just want to explain that payment system in China is quite complex. There is no, credit card has, penetration for credit cards going up, but it's not quite there yet. And because the stores are so fragmented, people don't really want to register their credit card and tie with every store. So there's all kinds of solutions, prepaid card, virtual currency from the bigger platforms. E-bank could work, but there is no single solution. And for a game to be distributed on multiple platforms, that means multiple payment integration. And for every platform, there are multiple payment methods because the store wants to capture all the possible payments. So you're talking about M times N type of integration. Now, this obviously is a problem and is something that carrier sees they could provide value. So the big three Chinese carriers, they all provide payment for the games. And this is what you hear about carrier billing. It's quite common in China, and it's sort of the de facto for a very long time. Now, obviously, the carrier are not doing this for charity. They take a big cut. How much of that is, there's 334 or 343 rev share. So the first one is carrier. They always take 30% for providing the payment service. Second one is channel or your store. It's either 30% or 40%, and the rest goes to the developer or the publisher. So what does that mean? When the developer first registered their game, they integrate the carrier billing and submit it to the carrier to be in the carrier's catalog. The developer or the publisher can choose to go with a 334 model or 343 model, basically saying, I want to give a little more to the store so they're more incentivized to push my game, or I want to keep a little more to myself and only do 30% to the channel. Now, in the Western developers case, you're not the publisher. Your publisher is the Chinese entity. And the Chinese entity is doing 50% rev share to you. So that means, at most, you're getting 20% or 15% or gross, respectively, because the publisher only gets 40% or 30%. On top of that, and before everything, there will be about 10% clawback from the carrier side for fraud, chargeback, and refunds. So really, what you're talking about is about 18% or 13.5% of booking or lower. The percentage for chargebacks and fraud have been increasing in recent months, so you're looking at probably even lower number of gross. And this sounds really bad and sounds like your publisher is. I hear a lot of developer complaining about Chinese publishers not doing enough, not pushing the game enough. But remember, publishers are also only getting less than 20% of the gross. And they have to do the integration for you on multiple channels. They have to submit for government compliance. There really is, the publishers in China really have a very thin profit margin. So it's not they don't want to push your game, it's they normally couldn't. Tencent, on the other side, because our distribution channel platform is so powerful, we don't use carrier billing, or not as much. It's sort of the last option. But we bundle all that together, billing, distribution, and not discovery, but the publishing side. So our channel fee is 25% for both distribution and payment, where carrier billing would take up 70 or 60%. For us, it's 25%. And if we do 50-50 rev share after channel, then you're getting 37 and half or 35% in case of iOS of booking. So you see this is already a much better percentage of growth, even though we also are calling it 50-50% rev share. So I think I really ran out of time, and fortunately, I'm sure there's a lot of questions on this, and we can work out the math.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jeff. Please give him a big hand. It was very useful information. So I think we have time for 2 questions. Is that okay? Yeah?
Hi. What is a typical percentage of payments made by SMS comparing to the rest of channels with prepaid cards and e-banking and those that you mentioned?
So the question is, what's the percentage of carrier billing versus as a percentage of all payment? Is that okay? Great question. I don't know. I doubt if there's any trustworthy numbers out there also, because like you see in the previous slide, the carrier billing is standard. It works in almost every situation. But there are many alternatives, and everyone is trying to build their walled garden, and they keep their, how much they process kind of secret. It's like nobody really knows the Android distribution in China, even though you see market report. But I would put that in. I probably don't know. That's probably the honest answer. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. One more question. Last question.
I understand that Tencent is probably the best way to have any games published in China. What's the best way to reach out to you guys to have our game considered to be published in China?
Sure. Great question. We have a BD team. I'm part of the Western BD team and covering Europe. And I don't know if my colleague is in here.
Lisa?
Right. Lisa? All right. So we have in Europe, we have a small office in Berlin. A couple of people there covering Europe. We have a US office in Palo Alto and LA. We have a Japan office and Korean office. So we're here, we come to the events and visit developers, try to build a relationship. So if you find it difficult to reach out to us, then we're not doing our job. Feel free to come grab me afterward. I'll introduce you to the appropriate liaison.
Thank you very much. Thank you,
Okay.
Jeff.
Thank you, Martin.